we're now going to go to the chat. We're going to have a conversation with Kellie-Jay Keane. So Kellie-Jay Keane, Posie Parker, has an incredibly popular and fantastic YouTube channel where she talks about what's going on her mind, and is just incredibly insightful huge amounts of the time. So what do you think's going on with this extremism thing?
So the idea of extremism was something that somebody said about Julia Long and myself. And I think where it comes from now is that women, even those standing supposedly on the side of women, have capitulated so much of our language that the word woman is seemingly abrasive and coarse, impolite, rude, and far too much for the delicate ears of polite society. And so I think it's that extremism, because everybody is moved, everybody's tried to find middle ground, which I think is a nonsensical idea when it comes to women's rights. We either have them or we don't. If we capitulate any of it, if we share any of our so-called rights, which I understand my foremothers fought very, very hard for, if we give up any of those and allow anyone to come in as an act of kindness, which actually I think is a dishonest idea, I think it's very unkind to women, then it's just really peculiar that is called an extremist position. I would have thought that was the position.
Yeah, and what I mean, it must be strange for you because you're painted as an extremist within the gender critical world, like so extreme that you're sort of beyond the pale, really, that a lot of women would say, oh no, that's really much too extreme for me. But then your audience is actually much more mainstream on many views, so you're reaching just everybody, I imagine. So what's going on there? What do you think's happening?
I don't know. We did this protest outside the Lancet yesterday, and people driving delivery trucks, people like both sexes, but majority men, I would say, female ambulance drivers, they all beeped and cheered and kind of got it, knew what was going on. I don't think any of those have read a feminist text. I don't think they've got any theoretical understanding as to why they don't want men in women's spaces. Normal people who do tangible, consequential things in their lives, who have to pay a mortgage and live normal, kind of 2 mortgage payments away from homelessness people, they perfectly understand what's at stake. They have discussions in pubs about not wanting their daughters to walk home alone. That doesn't mean they're not incredibly sexist often themselves, but they do recognize the danger that men pose to women. It's only when you seem to get a little bit lofty in more privileged households and jobs, more comfortable, that people then try and intellectualize this. There's nothing intellectual about not wanting a man in a woman's space. It's a really basic, instinctive compulsion that we don't want men in our space.
And what about the Lancet? You did a demo, and I thought, to be honest, I thought some of the people beeping, because I was watching it either live or just afterwards, and it was fantastic because I thought some of them might have been beeping about the dinosaurs, because you had these fantastic dinosaurs. But will you tell our viewers, because we have loads of women from all over the world and few men, what were the dinosaurs for?
Right. Let me just assure you that actually we were leafleting most of those people when they were stopped at the traffic lights before they came and beeped. So I'm just going to stick to the story that they were 100% behind our activism. The dinosaurs is because a politician called David Lammy, who continually covers himself in glory when it comes to women's rights, said a number of things. So David Lammy is in one of the poorest parts of London. There is incredibly high rates of child sexual exploitation, and David Lammy thinks it's fine to talk against safeguarding. And one of the things he said is that women in the Labour Party were hoarding rights and that we were dinosaurs. So actually it's old-fashioned and we should become extinct. It's an old-fashioned concept to keep women's rights just for women. He also thinks that in sex reassignment surgery, which I can't find an honest way of calling that surgery what it really is, but in what they call sex reassignment surgery, that men actually have a cervix created. So that was why it's sort of, most of the protests and the actions that I do, they start off with a bit of an idea, a bit of a like what we want to achieve. And Katie's idea was the dinosaurs in David Lammy's constituency. And then we looked, and there wasn't really anywhere really good that you could sort of talk to people in his constituency. So we switched that to the Labour Party, and I was already doing a Lancet protest. So we just combined the two.
So is you were outside the Lancet magazine or news, yes. And then did you go to the Labour Party as well? So you did yes. too. Oh yeah, brilliant. And so one thing is I'm interested, and I guess some of the other women here, where do you get your ideas from, and you, how do you sort of work out which one's going to work and which isn't? Because I think some women might not know, but Kellie-Jay's been running monthly Speakers Corner meetings for the last year, which are maybe year and a half, which are just really well attended and very dynamic and creative spaces and very inspirational, being out there and politically very powerful. But where do you get the ideas to do all these things?
Sometimes they're not my ideas. Sometimes they're other people's, or somebody sort of mentioned something, and I'm just a bit of a, well, I didn't know I was a bit of a doer, but I am a bit of a doer. So if someone says something and they're like, oh, that might be an idea, I think, well, let's do it then. Let's just do it. Let's see if it works. I don't mind failing. I don't mind being wrong. And so that probably does help me just move forward with ideas. But often it's about, everything for me comes from, how do I tell people what's happening? That's simply what I want to do. I want everybody to know what's happening, because if by consent and by fight and by normal gradual social change things happen, that's one thing. But this is a top-down coercive manipulation of the public against women. So it's just about telling people where the ideas come from, everywhere and anywhere. I'm just the person to actualize them and to move them forward.
And I mean, one of the things is that existing organizations who have things like bank accounts and structures, and they've known each other, say, through a political party for 20 years, and they know, oh yeah, if we're going to Bristol, we're going to call on so-and-so, we'll get so-and-so to speak, and we'll get these other people. They've been working together for many years, and it's one of the reasons it's so disastrous that institutions are being captured. And you have emerged as a real sort of political force, you and working with loads of other people, but from not being part of an institution. And how have you managed to, how do you reach people to get people to come to your demos? I mean, that's a big issue. How do we get women on the streets, or men and women? How have you done that?
I think through YouTube, that's been quite good. And I've been interviewed by sort of other people, some dodgy people, but mostly nice other channels have interviewed me. And so that's been quite a reach. I a couple of people outside the van shouted, "Hey, Posie," yesterday. And then somebody in the pub, I've been on talk radio a little bit recently. And so they said, "Oh, I've seen you on talk radio." This is all sort of young men. So I think that's how I'm getting them to do it. And what I'm not doing when they get there is I'm not doing what they might expect. So I understand the audience here. But if you mention the word feminism to some of the people who come to my meetings, they won't come. They don't want to be lectured about, maybe they think that they can't have relationships with their husbands anymore, or they mustn't love their sons, or they must try and live a separatist lifestyle. Now, I don't think that is what all feminists might say, but that is the perception. And so I'm not asking people, I'm just telling people what is going on and to make up their mind and basically see common sense. So I think that's attractive. I'm not asking too much of people. I'm just saying, come and listen. I think you'll agree with me. It's feminism is a big ask for a lot of women, because a lot of women don't want to understand exactly what's happening to them. They don't want to know the reason that they do all of the housework and they don't get paid as much and they get relied upon for unpaid labor, because actually there's a whole system against them. They don't want to know about that. So I don't offer it.
I mean, it's such a complicated struggle, and it's on so many different levels. It seems as if many of us are choosing different ways to work, and taking different angles, and some of them work incredibly well and some of them aren't so good, or they might be just doing sort of other work that's helpful. So what you're doing is particularly good as well, because it's very effective. I mean, another question I have is that you, as far as I can see, you get things like 7,500 people watch some of your just like Friday night chats. You just sort of get on and say, and how's that happened? Did it start off like that, or has it always been?
The first one I did before Facebook removed it, in about 2 days, got about 50,000 views. And that was a long time ago, but I'd been to a feminist meeting. I use that word quite loosely because it wasn't feminist. It was very woke. And they had a poster up that they designed themselves about terrible toughs. And I was animated and I was quite cross, and I can speak quickly and coherently, and people quite liked it. And I was relatively funny, I think, and swore a lot, and it got shared a lot. And people, I said the unsayable, because I think I believe, no, that's not my role. It's everybody's role to say the unsayable, quite frankly, but I'll actually do it. And so it was quite popular. So I thought, well, I'll start doing things, and people started watching. And so I continued, and it has grown. It's grown gradually. I think I've got about 40,000 subscribers now.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So and I mean, the thing that I find interesting is that Women's Human Rights Campaign, we're a network, and we have 52 country contacts, and we have a declaration and a webpage, and we're working in the tradition of the women's movement, second wave, working together, being quite collaborative. And we've got the Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights, which is our sort of key document, and we try to stick to talking in that language, and we keep going back to that, and I think we sort of make a compromise, because we don't want to swear or say or whatever, say too much that could look bad for the organization. I think it's good that we've developed an organization from scratch in 2 years, but it's also fantastic that you've got the freedom to just say what you think and make mistakes, and it's not you're not going to get loads of people annoyed with you. Well, do you get people writing in and sort of saying, oh, you shouldn't have said that?
No, well, I occasionally do, but it's rarely about my main topic. So it's rarely about women. Sometimes men will complain that they feel there's some anti-men stuff going on, and I just don't have any patience for that anymore. I probably used to say, I love my husband, I've got 3 sons. And I just think, well, if you don't know about that by now, then I don't really care. But I do think once you collaborate, once you're in an organization, of course you're restricted, because everybody is invested. It's pretty much me. And so if I want to say it, I can take the flak. And actually, I don't get attacked as much as people who maybe do try and deliver something a lot more reasonable, because I just don't have any patience. So if I want to say a man is a man, and actually most of them make us feel uncomfortable if they put women's clothes on, if we were all really honest, when men do cross-dress, unless he has a totally different feel than most of the men I've ever encountered cross-dressing, they do make women feel uncomfortable. And I don't think that's because we're all terrible transphobic bigots. I think it's because most of us have a really guttural instant response to something that we don't feel is particularly honest and poses a threat. And I think there is an undercurrent of that. And I think somebody should be able to, someone's got to be able to say it. Now, I know the lovely Sheila Jeffries is in your room somewhere, and Sheila will say it. And obviously she is a terrible extremist, but she'll say it, Julia will say it, Dr. Julia Long will say it, but there's not many people who are just willing and able to say it without the shackles of the approval of many other people that are relying on everybody delivering the same message. And both of those things is absolutely necessary for a movement, because I won't bring everybody on board. An academic feminist is not going to go, do you know what, that woman who just shoots from the hip with her peroxide blonde hair and face full of makeup, she is the woman for me.
How do you cope emotionally with being sort of ostracized by some groups?
I don't know what you mean, Joe. How do I cope? Well, I have had moments where I've been really, really, really upset. A couple of times, actually, and one was an organization and one was an individual, where I just felt I was absolutely enraged and in tears on both of those occasions. But it doesn't last for very long, because I'm not in it. I'm sure most of us are like this. I'm not in it for personal glory. I'm not in it because I want to find loads of friends. I do it because I think it's right. And so I can't be distracted to those people by those people and by that emotion. And I just compartmentalize it off. And actually, I think the winning is in the reaching your destination, which is to stop this assault on women's rights. That's the win. And the win is to just remain quite resolute and not get embroiled in these things, because even when I've been attacked, if I say a single word in my own defense, people call it infighting. And so I have got quite a good brain for just putting something in a box and just keeping it there, and not really, it doesn't spin around my head that much. The things that keep me up at night are girls having double mastectomies in the United States of America, not whether some blue tick feminist likes me. I just think that this is the fight of our lives, right? There's so many other things that are happening to women that none of those things you can talk about if we're not talking about women, if we can't actually say what a woman is. I've decided this is an unreality. That's what we're heading for, is an unreality, a severance of family. And I don't mean a nuclear mum, dad, kids family. I mean familial, biological connections. And if we're not standing up and ignoring the noise, and that there are some difficult women in this movement, some very unpleasant women in this movement, but if we can't ignore them, if we don't think what we're heading for is important enough just to, I'm nobody, I'm not important at all when it comes to this. My dispute with somebody is nothing in comparison to the threat, the global threat against women. So that's all I want to say.